Okay, so to open this afternoon's session or meeting, we will have the chairman of the ProvCom committee, Mr. Isaiah Crisanto.
Mabuhay! Welcome to Usapang UPOU, an initiative of the Consultation Subcommittee of the UPOU Provisional Committee. Thank you for taking the time today to join us, and I look forward to having open and transparent discussions about what the future of UPOU student representation should look like. I am Isaiah Crisanto, a third-year BAM student and the chairperson of the UPOU ProvCom. As the last UP constituent university without a student council, it's important to remember that this isn't just something nice to have, but a right granted to all students and enshrined in our university code. Specifically, in the UP System Code, Title II, Chapter 71, Article 432 and 433, which state, as constituents of the university, students are free, individually and collectively, to express their views on issues of institutional policy and on matters of interest to the student body. The official collective participation of students in the formulation and application of institutional policy affecting academic and student affairs shall be made through student councils. That's Article 432. Under Article 433, it says, there shall be a college student council in each college that offers at least a bachelor's degree program and a university student council in each constituent university. Kasama po dyan ang UPOU. But that's not all. In fact, there is Article 434. The composition of each student council, its officers, and the manner of its selection of its members and officers shall be in accordance with the Constitution ratified by the student body, kayo po yun, and submitted to the Chancellor or President. Ang ibig sabihin po natin ay ang mga isko at iska ng UPOU ang magde-decide ng anong klaseng student council ang gusto natin. I imagine a student council that is built on the values that future digital democracies should have, such as decentralization, freedom, open source, and consensus-based democracy. Through this forum, we want to hear from you, our fellow students. What would you like to see in a student council? What voting systems, representatives, or values should be enshrined in our Constitution? Together, let us strive towards genuine student representation. Again, I thank you and I wish you all a very fruitful discussion. Para sa bayan.
Indeed, para sa bayan, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Isaiah Crisanto is with us this afternoon for the UsapangConsti. Hello, Isaiah. Say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to answer any questions you might have, and thank you for joining us in our event today.
Thank you, Isaiah. And to ensure that the Constitution is inclusive of the students' ideas and concerns, may I introduce to you the ProvCom.
Mabuhay!
Good day, everyone. I'm Chen Gadote from the Consultation Subcommittee. So allow me to introduce to you the UPOU Provisional Committee. So who are we and what do we do? The Provisional Committee was actually formed by the UP Office of the Student Regent and along with the UPOU's Office of Student Affairs. So in May 2021, the first call for applications was posted on my portal, and a second round of applications was held in August, both of which were open to all students. Our mandate is to establish a UPOU student constitution and electoral code. So how exactly do we do this? The first step would be to draft the constitution. Once that's done, we need to have it ratified, or in other words, approved by majority of the student body through a vote. Then, it will be passed on to our chancellor for approval. Only after all that can we hold student council elections. Now, to help with the delegation of tasks, the ProvCom has been subdivided into 3 subcommittees. The first subcommittee is campaigns. So if you've been following our social media accounts, this is the subcommittee behind them. Their job is to inform you, the student body, about what we're doing and the progress that we're making. They're here to ensure transparency between the students and the ProvCom. The second subcommittee is consultations. So our job is to communicate with the student body and to learn more about your thoughts and insights relevant to our agenda. Now, our goal is to ensure that the Constitution reflects the students' ideas and preferences. So far, we've sent out a survey, and this open forum is also another way for us to consult with the students. The third subcommittee is writing, so they're in charge of the actual drafting of the Constitution. They do this by referring to constitutions of other UP constituents and later on by incorporating the findings of the consultation subcommittee. Apart from these three subcommittees, we also have a core team consisting of the chairperson, the vice chairperson, a non-voting secretariat, and the core members of each subcommittee. So the chairperson is there to lead, support, and give direction to the committee with the assistance of the vice chair. And the secretariat handles the agenda, the documents, and minute taking of the Provcom. So I've already talked about the duties and responsibilities of the provisional committee, but let's not forget that the student body also has a role to play here. So your support and active participation is immensely valuable to our success in complying with our mandate. So our purpose, the reason why the UPOU Provisional Committee exists is because we seek, or more accurately, we are entitled to genuine student representation. So this is not just the Provcom's fight, but every UPOU student's fight. What I ask of you, the student body, is to be active, or even better, proactive, with sharing your thoughts and insights regarding the matter of student representation in our university. And also to respond to the call to participate and be involved with vigor and enthusiasm. So that is all. Thank you. Good day, everyone.
Ayan po. So it was introduced na. The Provcom committee is introduced, and by the way, I'm Jen, one of the members of the consultation committee. So without further ado, in this juncture, what we'll do is we will present the constitution, the draft constitution, and by article, preamble, and then the article. And after that is we are open to comments and suggestions and any comments from you. And then we'll talk about your comments related to that article. We have here Mr. Isaiah to answer also your questions. So the Constitution, here's the Constitution of the students of the University of the Philippines, Open University. The preamble. We, the students of the University of the Philippines, Open University, in order to build a just and humane society, recognize the vital role of open and distance education in nation building through the values of democracy, openness, transparency, equity, and liberty, establish a student government that shall embody our ideals and values, promote the common good, encourage social transformation for the benefit of Filipinos worldwide, binding ourselves in commitment to these ideals, to ordain and promulgate this Constitution. Okay, so if you have comments, we sa ating preamble, we are nagsend na din po ako ng link sa ating draft constitution. So if you'd like to view it doon sa Word, then you may do so. And then open na po kami for comments and suggestions. So far, Isaiah, wala atang comment for this one, for the preamble.
Yes, and those who are attending today, please note that as long as you have a UP Mail account, you are able to leave comments directly on the Google Doc. I think I see Pia, sorry, who's this? Inigo already, and someone else commenting. So if you are not sure yet, or if you want to ask about a specific item, you can always comment directly on the Google Doc.
Okay, and by the way, for today, we'll just talk about the preamble and then Article 1 to Article 5. The remaining articles rather would be discussed on Saturday, both in morning and afternoon session. So since wala tayong comment for the preamble, we'll proceed with Article 1 or on the general provision. Section 1, this Constitution shall be known as the Constitution of the Students of the University of the Philippines Open University. Section 2, this Constitution shall govern all students of the University of the Philippines Open University. And the third section is on the definition of terms. Earlier this morning, we have a comment on Article 1, which is on the definition of student. So the question was, kasi sinabi dito that I think related din sa Article 3, sinabi dito is a student is any person admitted to and registered in a degree or non-degree program or has cross-registered within the University of UPOU on a regular or part-time basis. So they were asking, they were asking about what if yung cross-registered student will make an organization in UPOU? Does that mean na allowed siya given his or her circumstances? I mean, we are not degrading those students na nag-cross-enroll, but meron kasi silang limitations when it comes to organizing activities or magpa-elect during mag-file ng candidacy for election. So yun yung naging question earlier. Scope ng estudyante or ano yung definition ng students sa ating constitution, and also it was raised that, for example, students who are in teaching certificates, are they classified as students, or ano ba yung classification nila sa UPOU constitution?
Well, so to answer some of the questions, first of all, yes, they are considered students. The question really more of is whether or not this constitution applies to them. Thank you for those. Can you note to ask those questions? Those are very good questions.
Yeah, Mike, I think you know him. And Jomar also,
Sige.
I think Jomar knows him.
Yeah, he's one of the ProvCom ambassadors. Can you either ask him to put it or place it on the document? Because what we're doing right now is we're looking at whenever there's a question, we compare with maybe 3 or 4 different constitutions from UP, and we also look at other universities such as Ateneo, LaSalle, and just generic constitutions like from countries. In regards to the cross registration, that's a little tricky. I don't think that would be covered under the constitution for the organizations, because the way student orgs will be handled is in a separate, which is the CASO proposal that we submitted to the UPOU, which is the Committee on Accrediting Student Organizations, which is a different body that identifies the rules and the requirements for creating student organizations in OU. Kasi in UP Diliman, they have the UP Bukluran system. So for us, that would be our CASO system, if ever that was to be passed. So I think in terms of student orgs, that's not for us to decide within the Constitution, but that certainly is a good question whether someone cross-registering just a single unit or a single class, are they eligible to vote? That is a good question. That may be covered in the election code, but I think that should be cleared up in the Constitution already.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you.
In Section 2 or Article 3, Section 2 might be parang contrast kasi siya doon din. Kasi sinabi dito that any person may seek the protection of an art thus covered by this article and the policies and bodies provided for in. So baka conflict tong Section 2 doon sa gagawin nating election code. That's one of the concern earlier. Kaso rather, ang kaso ang gagawa nun, di ba, election code. Tama ba?
Okay. So
Section 2.
Article 2 has potential conflict because active students are still, because LOA students are still considered students, diba?
Yeah, they were asking if we can define in this constitution sino yung students and what are yung parang ano yung for example, regular student. The regular student can organize.
But okay, I will explain why that doesn't work immediately. UP Open University, by nature, as an open university, does not recognize the concept regular student. Because a regular student goes to a more traditional university. Because it's an open university, we don't discriminate, diba? So if we don't discriminate, how can you call someone regular and irregular? Kasi nga, we're not supposed to discriminate. You can come from any geography, you can have a physical ailment that does not affect whether you are a regular student or not, diba? What I have pointed out to the writing subcommittee is, for example, if you look at Ateneo de Manila University, they have their Sanggunian, and their Sanggunian also passed the Magna Carta for students. So the Magna Carta for students outlines in more detail the rights of the students. For example, the right to get their grades on time. I think that's an issue that many OU students have. I think that should be covered under the Magna Carta for students, which can be passed by the USC Council once it's elected. You have to understand that the Constitution cannot be overly specific. Because the idea of the Constitution is that it is the fundamentals, it is the basics. And all laws, all resolutions emanate from this or are based on this Constitution. So we encourage and we like questions about specificity, but please understand that the Constitution by nature has to be a little general, not vague, but general.
Yeah, just like the requirements na para bumoto ka, ay para maging eligible ka para maging presidente ng Pilipinas. The requirements are hindi siya ganoon ka specific talaga. You have to read, you know how to read and write and blah blah blah. So, yeah, parang ganun yung inaano mo sa Constitution. Okay, so far wala namang questions dito sa chat box na. From the participants, any questions on Article 1 that you want to ask? So far wala. Okay, wala namang nag-chat pa so far. There was also, by the way, a question on the faculty representative because there are students also now na tawag doon, working in UPOU. So,
sort of conflict of interest, no?
Yeah, conflict of interest.
Okay, so that's a good question. That needs to be raised with the student region. Because as far as I know, we are trying to maintain the autonomy of the student council and the school administration. So that is a good question. What do we do in the cases where the student is also a active faculty or member of the institution, diba? I think that would be a conflict of interest clause. Like we would have to place one. For example, I'm not sure which section, but it says that if you are in the student publication, you cannot run for office. So it may be if you work for the university, you cannot run for office at the same time. Diba? Let me see. Yeah. Yes, okay. Section Okay, Article 6, Section 10 states no council member shall hold office while being an editor-in-chief of a university publication or heading any student organization in the university without forfeiting their seat in the council. So we already um, placed there that you can't do both. So I think we need to add a section regarding those who are working with the university. So, sige, writing committee, please take note of that.
Thank you. And then we'll proceed with Article 2, Declaration of Principles and Objectives. The UPOU-USC is a democratic and parliamentary state. Section 1, education is a right, not a privilege, and it should be afforded to everyone. Section 2, education should develop the physical, intellectual, psychological, social, and cultural potentials of the students in order to realize their part in genuine social change. Section 3, education shall foster the critical thinking and analytic abilities of the students to make informed choice and judgment, free of dogma, myth, and superstition. Questions po from our participants? Any part in Article 2 na gusto niyo pong mag-raise ng question? So far, I don't have questions sa Article 2.
So not even questions, but you can also provide feedback, perhaps wording, for example. One feedback given a long time ago was the use of gendered language in the Constitution, where it was all predominantly patriarchal. So it was he, him, etc. And then the next one was he, her, he, she. And so someone pointed that out and we fixed it. So the Constitution in general should feature non-gendered language that does not discriminate anyone and is more open and welcoming to all students. So even things like that are definitely things that we are considering as a provisional committee.
Ay, meron pala akong note dito, Isaiah. For Article 2, is it possible daw na merong section dito explaining UP education and how we can be as inclusive as possible as a university?
Can you please explain that? I'm confused.
Because ang section 1, section 2, general. So I think this question is also related yung sinabi mo na the Constitution kasi should not be as specific as possible. But earlier, Mike told me that yung about sa UP education, can we add something
Okay,
about education?
perhaps instead of about UP education specifically, we can expound on the concept of an open university, diba? Kasi the open university as a concept, traditionally it meant just open door policy. You didn't even have an exam to get in, for example. But the name, the wording of open university has changed in terms of time, diba? So if anything, we might talk about that, but that's also university policy, not the student. Like we as students don't have control over how that how we're taught, to be honest, because that is under the control of the university, not the student body. Because we're not the educators, we're the learners, right?
I think dito papasok yung tawag doon. Parang how inclusive or ano yung paano ba yan? He was telling me kasi na UP education, but I get your point that it should be UPOU because we have a different setting naman compared sa iba, no? And maybe declare kung kasi inclusivity ang main ano niya.
Inclusivity for who? Like for everyone, or what are we trying to say?
For everyone, kasi there was a question earlier about parang we are pushing for inclusivity, yet we are, example, yung sinabi ko sa'yo kanina na ano daw kasi siya Adventist, and then hindi siya makatake ng compre because the comprehensive exams are scheduled every Saturday, and I think they have religious activities. So parang i-ano natin, i-declare natin dito that UPOU is or UP is inclusive with whatever your gender.
Okay, well that okay, let me clarify. So the university code itself already guarantees protections against discrimination like that, right? So as long as you're in the UP system, you're already covered under those protections. Those are not protections that are provided by students. Now, what we could do, and again, I'm realizing this more and more. We should have had this sooner, but we learn as we go along. But that should be in the Magna Carta for students. So, for example, if the Magna Carta for students specifies that students have the right to get their grades on time, you also have the right to scheduling. You can ask for scheduling considerations, etc. However, as far as I know, in the case of religious exemptions, you should contact the FIC and the university directly. The the student council, if ever, could help endorse your claim, but it would have no control over the actual schedule of the exam, right? We could lobby, we could strike, we could complain, we can petition, but that doesn't mean we have control over the actual exam schedule. But we can fight for the rights of the student, diba?
Yes. And ngayon pa naman, wala pa tayong mga council, so hindi din pala mapupush. The exam kasi is scheduled on April 2, the comprehensive exam, and so hindi talaga siya makakatulong.
Okay, well, what I'm pointing out for this specific person is that would be a discrimination on the basis of religion, because they are making a university requirement that he or she cannot fulfill because of the religious obligations that they have, correct? I had a classmate who also similar could not attend on Saturdays, so we had to reschedule our meetings, diba? And our professor, she explained to the professor also that she could not submit on weekends because of that. Because you have even like, for example, Jewish communities also have that they cannot work on the Sabbath, right? It's not limited to a small sect. Technically, Catholics also should get the Sunday off, but in OU, because a lot of it is asynchronous, it's really up to you. But for the synchronous exams, I think you should be able to request and explain your situation. Because if the university doesn't budge, then that may be considered discrimination. But you have to balance kasi exemption, right? And because if you exempt someone, then who is allowed to be exempted? And so it's a very fine line. It's a very fine line.
Okay, so yeah, I'll tell him also. Let's have the Article 3, Rights of Students, Section 1. A student is any person admitted to and registered in a degree or non-degree program, or has cross-registered with the University of the Philippines Open University on a regular or part-time basis. So earlier, ang sinabi niya, if pwedeng ganito na yung definition, however, in the definition of terms in Article 1, we can parang mas doon yung parang operational definition ng word na student at UPOU. That was the suggestion earlier. Number 2 is, for the purposes of this article, a student shall include any person who is officially on leave of absence has not yet been separated from the university formally through either transfer, graduation, honorable or dishonorable dismissal, expulsion, or expiration of the allowable period for maximum residence in the university, or has been separated from the school but pursues a pending suit for violations under existing university rules and regulations. And that was section 1, part 2, and this is section 2, notwithstanding section 1, any person may seek the protection of and are thus covered by this article and of the policies and bodies provided for in or created pursuant to this constitution. Ayan. Does this mean ba that all students, all kind degree, non-degree, or cross-registered students have the same rights and lahat-lahat sila pareho ng rights sa UPOE?
So the rights guaranteed to students should be the same for all students, correct? What may change, however, is the participation. So that's kind of tricky. For example, LOA, I'm not sure what's the maximum time that you can be on a leave of absence, because I'm familiar in OU, some are years. Some students are years on leave of absence before they come back and finish their program, which is very different than any other university. You don't see people doing that in other universities since it's not as flexible as OU. So in that whole period of time, is that person still considered a student at UPOU? MRR in UP system is 8 years. So that's your maximum residency rule, but that only applies to undergraduates. For graduate programs, I'm not really sure. I think there's a 10-year limit,
For PhD.
right?
Yeah.
For 10-year limit on whether your credits can still be counted towards your degree. So that's a long time to consider a person as an active student all the time. But this section does not cover elections. So obviously they may be a student, but they may not be qualified to vote. So that should be clear to people that being a student, there is still requirements to be eligible to vote, for example. But as a student, you are entitled to the same rights and protections that all students have.
On Article 3, Section 2 also, there was a question on residency. For example, daw kasi, halimbawa, but we had a similar we had a separate discussion. What if daw yung student is graduate student, and then this is on Section 1, Part 2 rather. And then on residency siya, is he or she allowed to, is he or she entitled to the same rights as yung mga estudyante na tawag doon, naka-enroll talaga. Naka-enroll din naman siya, pero residency lang yung in-enroll niya.
Okay, so Jomer, am I correct that someone in the ambassadors program, a teacher, was talking about residency before? Yes. Okay. Yeah, they are still a student. Yun nga, whether or not they can vote, that will be up to the election code and the election board. But to me, at least from my understanding, the rights of students are designed to protect students from academic abuse, personal abuse that can come from the university as a system and as individuals. For example, a professor or a program chair. And the council will fight and protect those rights of students as they are outlined in the university code and the system code. Yes, Jomer points out, I think they still have the right, especially kapag thesis yan, which is antagal talaga. I agree with that statement. The if you're not taking any classes, right? For example, but you're finishing your thesis. Jen, you're a PhD student, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Um,
When you're doing your thesis, that's still schoolwork, right? Would you not consider that you're still in you're still in school every time you're working on your thesis?
yes, I am a student pa din ako noon, enrolled ako may Form 5. 'Di ba? And
Mm-mm.
then, pero meron kasing case sa amin na mag-enroll ka ng residency pero tawag doon, in preparation for the comprehensive exam. But you're not doing your thesis. Comprehensive exam lang.
So are they, question, yes or no, are they currently enrolled student?
Technically, meron kaming form, tatanggap sila ng Form 5, yes. So, I would say, student siya. But,
Okay. Hi, we're joined by Mickey Tolentino. She's the head of our campaigns committee in Provcom. She says yes, that they are enrolled. So if they have a Form 5, they're enrolled, they're a student. I think that's clear naman.
Okay. What about yung teaching certificate? Parang meron ata silang peculiar yung setting nila. Parang wala silang ganon.
So for the teaching certificate, we have already sent an email to the chancellor and to the OSR requesting clarification on this. The issue with certificate programs is they're not degrees. They're not degree granting programs. They're certificate programs. Okay, hi. Yes, Julius Neal. Yes, you're currently enrolled with residency status. Thank you for clarifying that. We want to make sure we cover all possible scenarios for students. Okay, going back. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So for the teaching certificates, we were looking at other universities. So for example, Ateneo de Manila does not consider teaching certificates, special programs, or even like just you're taking a summer class. Diba? Those are not considered degree granting programs. They're not considered fully enrolled students. So they may have the same protections as students, but they cannot start organizations. They cannot really vote. That's my understanding. So we are clarifying that so that that can be fixed. Because the all of the other UP constitutions specifically state degree granting units. Kasi for example, if you went to a summer class in UP, you can't say that you graduated from UP. Hindi naman ganun, di ba? Or you might think that just because you took a certificate program that makes you a graduate of the university, which we've seen some politicians try to pass off, not naming names, but that does not make you a graduate of that university. It simply means you have a certificate from that university. So that's the position that we hold based on the references that we have. Again, this may be different for OU because we are looking at potentially hundreds of thousands of people taking certificate programs as we offer more and more. Because I think under the UP system, merong model. Am I correct, Jen?
Yeah, yes.
Could you explain just for the viewers what model is?
Um, what the Open University na case?
Yes. So can you open the website? I think it's
Um,
model
it's actually a parang courses. UP Open
MOOC
University.
platform. Yeah.
They're offering courses, wide range of courses in different fields. Tapos these are free and everyone kahit hindi ka naka-enroll, I was actually once ako diyan, hindi pa ako estudyante ng UPOU. So pwede ka as long as meron kang account. Pwede kang mag-aral diyan. And you can get a certificate.
So to my knowledge, not every MOOC is free. Some MOOCs may
I'm not
may have charge or are closed kasi not all of the courses are open courses kasi. As in there was a course that I attended that you had to be invited to take the course. You couldn't just sign up from the website. So, for example, this model system is a MOOC platform. These are not considered enrolled students in UPOU. They cannot vote because it's a massive online course. So perhaps the distinction should be made clear that this is separate from the actual university, which you would consider to be like the My Portal area of where it is. So maybe if that paradigm helps people, like if you're in My Portal, you're taking classes, you're taking a degree at UPOU. If you're on Model, you're simply taking certification or even like crash courses or summer classes um, in UPOU. But this is still part of the university's mandate for open and distance e-learning. Just for context, kasi, and Jen, you can share your PowerPoint again. The the Open University in the UK has something like 200,000 students. They don't currently have a student council, but imagine if and it's not hard to believe that UPOU can grow to that size in a few decades. Maybe in a decade, you could have a lot of students taking their education predominantly online, as we've seen in the pandemic. So in cases like that, those are becoming to be very huge constituencies that might even be bigger than barangays, right? So then it becomes a question of how do you effectively legislate and who is a student, who is not. But I think for the most part, the Constitution is very generic about that because it's constantly changing. We don't want to be, again, overly specific na, for example, imagine we cite My Portal in the Constitution. But in 5 years, baka like junk size, we junk My Portal. And then how would you need to then change the Constitution? Correct? So the Constitution needs to be versatile enough and platform agnostic or platform independent. It cannot talk about specific technology or talk about specific platforms, but instead it outlines our values and ideals of how we want to run the student council and how we want to live as students of OU.
Okay, so for another consideration maybe for section 1 part 2 is for students na nag-defer, are they considered as students? Kasi for example,
go back to the earlier question, right? If you defer, are you still considered a enrolled student?
Pag defer ka, wala kang form 5 eh. So not a student.
Yeah. So the Form 5 kasi is like your proof of, if you went to another university, they would ask you for a Form 5 to prove that you are currently enrolled, right? So without mentioning Form 5 in the Constitution, I don't think they would count as enrolled students, correct? Yes, Jomer, proof of enrollment, correct, that's the term. So proof of enrollment, for a certain presidential candidate, that becomes a very big question. Did this person ever enroll in this university? Were they ever actually in this university? And so if they don't have a Form 5, then they're not currently enrolled. They're not technically a student. And again, for example, let's say you're in the university, you're a student, you get student rights. You leave the university, you lose those student rights because you're no longer a student. It doesn't apply to you. And then let's say 3-4 years from now, you return to the university, take a new program or even continue your old program, you reacquire all of your rights as a student. So as long as you're a student, as long as you're in UPOU, then you get the rights of a student. But if you're not a student of OU, you don't need the rights of a student, so that should be the distinction.
Okay, so that's for section 1. Medyo marami-raming no? Section 1 part 2. Definition of a student. Iba't iba yung case. We have absence. What else? We have deferment, and then
Residency.
Residency, marami siyang ano. Maybe it would help us if ma-define din ito sa election code.
Yeah, so in the election code, that would be the who is a qualified voter, correct?
Yes.
But the reason the Provcom is not also handling the election code is because the previous committee, fun fact for those not aware, in 2016, there was a previous attempt to start a student council, and the UPOU Provcom at the time wrote both the constitution and the election code. And it was raised by the student regent as well as several students who filed a petition that the suggestion for future committees was to separate this role, and so that the people writing the rules were not also trying to enforce the rules and also trying to benefit from the rules. This is the whole concept of separation of powers. So it was clarified very early on that this is not in the purview of the Provcom. That in terms of elections and deciding who can vote, when they can vote, that's not determined by Provcom. For example, if you look at the 1987 Constitution, it creates the COMELEC. And so the COMELEC is the body that determines whether or not someone can vote. They set more specific guidelines and registration requirements, all that sort of thing. So that's similar to what we would have in OU.
Okay. Now, do we have wala pong questions sa chat box so far, but if you have some questions, please feel free to ask.
I think I saw one question from one of the participants. Let me see. No, but this is for Article 4. So okay, you can continue muna.
Okay. Article 3, continuation, Section 3. The University Student Council shall promulgate the necessary rules of the enforcement and protection of this and such other rights that may from time to time be claimed or acknowledged. Section 4, Part 1, students shall exercise these rights responsibly and with due regards for the rights of others. Section 4, Part 2, in exercising these rights, students shall have the duty to help engender an academic community conducive to harmony and foster unity among the various members of the university community. Let's see. So far, walang questions. Okay, and let's have the Article 3, rights of students, fundamental rights, academic rights, right to representation, and we also have the procedural rights. So safety, dignity, freedom of speech, accurate information, individuality, privacy, and rule of law at times. I have question pala dito sa fundamental, no, not mine, but one of the participants.
Okay.
Tawag doon, dito ba daw sa fundamental rights yung sa discrimination?
Yes. So in terms of discrimination, however, again, these are already enshrined in the system code, in the UP system code, and in the university. We would like to reiterate them. We would like to reinforce them. So that would fall under, yes, that would fall under fundamental rights.
Okay, and then on academic rights, competent instruction, faculty contact, final grades, course information and standards, fair access, academic freedom, and faculty evaluation. Yeah, the question, of course, dito sa part na to was about the grades. Kasi, ayun nga. Though not happening in PhD, but in I think undergrad it's happening. So
the thing with the academic rights, these are rights that we demand or that we say are necessary. In terms of enforcement, there's a difference between writing a law and enforcing the law. I think that's what OU students need to understand. There is a difference. So the difference for us is these are what we say we should have. Now, whether or not we get them is whether or not we fight for it and whether we make sure that we are granted it. So just because it's written somewhere doesn't mean you get it immediately. You have to fight for it. There's been a lot of struggle to get a lot of the rights we enjoy today, but today they are guaranteed rights. They are inalienable rights, such as the human rights. So in terms of academic rights, these are things that the student council and the students will need to fight for if they truly believe that that is their right. For example, do you have the right to get your grade on time? I personally think so. And so if that is the case, and then we enshrine that, it's still up to the students to make sure that that is what happens. Because you still have no control over the actual university operations. Okay, representation.
Okay, so ang question talaga dito is, how do you exercise your rights? Kasi kung hindi mo talaga ipapaglaban din, wala ding mangyayari kahit meron tayong black and white.
That is true. You know, my father has an interesting scenario that he does with his staff. He asks them, name as many human rights as you can. Okay, there are actually quite a number of them. And so name the human rights that you can, and the ones that you cannot name, I will take away from you. But so obviously he cannot actually take away people's rights. But the point of the experiment is, how can you defend rights you are not familiar with, or you're not aware of, right? For example, the human rights, you have the right to freedom of movement. You should be allowed to travel. And so if you think about it, sometimes you may argue that lockdowns are a violation of your human rights because you're being forced not to, you're being restricted in your movement. So that's also like that talaga. If the rights you're not aware of will be taken away from you, because if you do not know them, if you do not exercise them, you do not protect them, there will be forces that will take it away from you.
Napaisip ako doon sa ano yung mga ano yung mga rights na napaisip ako. Okay. So I hope hindi ako magkaka-face ng ganung dilemma.
Well, for example, Jen just asked right now, how many human rights are there? Would you even know how many there are?
Parang feeling ko violated ako.
So there are 30, right? But when we do the experiment, most people can barely name 6 rights, right? So ano na mga 24 rights mo? Tanggal na. Just because you're not familiar with it. So human rights, for example, the 30 human rights enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there's still a lot of education that needs to go around for that. So same thing here, which is why we're doing programs like UsapangConsti to really educate the students on what do we have, because you cannot fight for what you do not know. Sige. Procedural rights, I think.
Yeah, procedural rights. By the way, I would just like to share this one. Siguro for notes na lang. The faculty evaluation, one shared na yung faculty evaluation, lagi naman daw siyang nag-evaluate. However, he does not feel na merong gamit yung faculty evaluation. So I don't know saan tayo ano doon because we are writing the Constitution. Hindi naman tayo taga-enforce nun, di ba? Wala naman tayong power over it.
Imagine more like you're in a relationship with someone. You can criticize them all you want. You can give them feedback. But that doesn't mean they're going to change, right? That doesn't mean they're going to change. If you tell someone that I think you need to make your PowerPoints nicer, that doesn't mean they're going to change. However, again, let me reiterate, as students, as a unified student body, there are ways for you to protest. You can write a petition. You can go on strike. You can demonstrate against a certain individual, professor or admin who refuses to change. That's how you motivate change. You cannot just legislate. The teacher must follow what the comments are on the evaluation form. That's not how it works. I think the procedural rights have been removed. So I will ask the writing committee whether or not this is still here or if this has been moved because it's not under our control. So I think this might go in the Magna Carta for students, because at least in the document I'm looking at, we stop at section 27. Because there's this misconceived notion that if you write it, they will follow, right? So they think that we can cover every case with the Constitution. It's important to explain to people that just because you tell someone it's written on paper doesn't change reality. If we say that teachers must listen to the feedback, that doesn't mean they will. But it does mean that it is something we find important and is something we will fight for. So that's what's important in how we write the Constitution. Okay, thank you. Let's keep it moving.
We have Article 4 on virtual spaces or tambayan. Section 1 is an online learning open university. There should be an official virtual space or online tambayan supported and provided by the university where students can freely express their thoughts, connect, and conduct academics and organizational initiatives or activities and share their learning experiences with one another. Section 2, the virtual space for tambayan shall include classes updated yearly that represent the organizations, councils, commissions, and committees where students can participate and join.
So some of the changes that have been made very recently to Article 4 is it's no longer tambayan. The proposed name at the moment is tagpuan sa UPOU, where you meet. So the background on this article is basically you have a right to your campus. If you're a UP Diliman student and you want to hold a rally, you can rally inside the campus. If you want to meet with your friends or your org, you have a space within the campus. And so our argument to the chancellor and to the admin of the UPOU is, in our case, my portal is our virtual campus. And so for the last 8 months, we've been demanding access to that campus. For example, by posting on the message board, on the news. So right now, for example, technically there is not really a censor, but there is a verification or like a editorial process before we can post our schedules on my portal. It needs to be submitted through OSA and then approved by ICTDO. That's not free speech. That's editorialized content. And so what we really explained to the admin is students need a place where they can be free, filtered, that's correct, yes, where students can be free to express themselves in a less academic environment. For example, I think many of you may be familiar with your discussion forums turning into plastikan forums where you're like, hello, Jen, I really liked your reflection. I found it very intriguing and insightful. You know, that may be good academic conversation, but that might not be genuine student discussion. And it may not be the place for us where we feel like, people don't want to express themselves if they're worried that everything they say is graded under a discussion forum. Um, so the purpose of Article 4 talaga is to create that platform and to guarantee that platform to students, which is the biggest complaint we get from students, which is they can't connect, they don't know who their classmates are, there's nowhere to find orgs, there's nowhere to talk. Um, and why is it important that we have our own platform? There are many groups on Facebook, there are many channels on Discord. The importance of our own platform is, as we've seen in the last year, these big tech platforms come and go. And so if we don't ensure our own independence from these platforms, we are beholden to them. In fact, you are censored by them, like on Facebook, right? So if we want to promote freedom of speech and freedom of expression, you need to have that independence of your platform. Now, there's a question from Luis Inigo Silvia. Does this include programs that are implemented by institutions like Ugnayan ng Pahinungod? Okay. So to clarify this, we also sent in our tagpuan proposal. For example, let's talk about the official student publication. the official student publication should be autonomous or separate from the council. However, they should still have access to the same tambayan as an organization, as an institution, and as students. But they must also maintain their own website. They must maintain their own platform as well. So a organization like Panghinood is a university-run organization. They should still run their own platform. They can participate in our tagpuan, but they should still be able to exist without the tagpuan. Right? They should still have their own platform. Does this answer your question, Luis Inigo Silva? All right, we'll just wait to see if you. Okay, we have a thumbs up. Thank you. Sure, please leave more questions. We are constantly expanding the scope of who gets to see the Constitution. More and more students, more and more questions that are really interesting to us that we haven't seen. Like, can you imagine we went 8 months asking every kind of question and we completely forgot about whether or not teaching certificates are a graduate or undergraduate. So we really thank your active participation.
Article 5, this is the last article for today, duties and obligations of the students. Section 1, as members of the institution, the students shall commit themselves to, number 1, observe the rules and policies of the UPOU, UP System Code, and the UPOU Students' Constitution. For letter A, the question was, kailan provide or does UPOU ba provide this one, the UP System Code and the Students' and the other example rules and policies of UPOU? A copy of these documents?
All the documents are available publicly. So if you are, yes, they are provided. Technically, they're provided. If you can access them, when you enter the university, you can download the system code. You can search the code. The UPOU Student Constitution will be available for all students and is accessible. Because you can't have a secret constitution. Ano naman yun, di ba? So all of these are available. So that's letter A. The BCD, so this is the duties and obligations of students are not present in, for example, the UP Cebu, at least to my knowledge, the UP Cebu, the UP Cebu Student Constitution. And the Article 5 is a response to a request from the former student region in 2016 to add a duties and obligations of students in OU. So this kind of like the social contract, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke. This is a social contract that UPOU students have that, as a council, we want to fight for these protections, but we also need you to participate in the process and to be an active citizen of the UPOU government, the state, for example. Yes. So embody core values of university, which are to give honor and excellence. Obviously that goes under the plagiarism code, your defamation, etc. But simply Article 5 is just is a reaction talaga to that request, because the previous committee saw that without this, without explaining the duties and obligations of students feel entitled to simply do nothing in OU. And that's possible. Many people do not wish to participate in politics or in extracurriculars, and that is fine. You'll notice that we don't require you to join an org in the duties and obligations. We don't require you to join an org. We do, however, require you or encourage you to be an active member of the community. So what does that mean? That means observing the rules and policies, disseminating information, creating a safe learning space, and living honor and excellence. I had a friend recently tell me it's like sleep well And I told them, yes, I will sleep with excellence, with honor and excellence. UP student talaga, kahit sa pagtulog, with honor and
With honor and
excellence.
excellence. Okay, and that's it for today, Article 1 to Article 5. So the remaining articles will be discussed on Saturday.
These also need to be updated because the text is changing every day.
Yes. Okay. So, do you have any questions po? That yun lang yung papag-usapan natin for today, Article 1 to Article 5. So, if you have any questions, Isaiah is here to answer your question. And by the way, fill out the participants form na binigay ko and chinat ko nasa chat box, and then a copy of the Constitution is also given as a chat box din po.
All right. So I just want to say also, if you don't have questions, feel free to also share your experience or share your feedback on the process. Okay, hi, we get from Julius Neal. Is it possible to have a quick recap of the major articles before we proceed to Q&A? What do you think, Jen? Can we do that?
Okay. Sige. Okay, so for today we talk about the 5 articles. I'm not sure if I can memorize this everything. So Article 1 is on the general provisions. It includes the definition of terms and the purpose of this constitution. Then for Article 2, we have the declaration of principles and objectives, the definition of what is education in general and also in UP in the UP system. Then for Article 3, we talk about the rights of the students and all other information related and, if I may, exemptions doon sa definition ng student. And then also the coverage of the rights of the students. Then for Article 4, this talks about the tagpuan. It's not tambayan anymore. The virtual spaces, the importance of having a platform for students to meet through tagpuan sa UPOU. Then for Article 5, it talks about, since in Article 3, we talk about rights and responsibilities. Of course, if meron tayong rights and responsibilities, we also have in Article 5 the duties and obligations of UPOU students. Please note that in Article 5, the students are not forced to join any organizations but are encouraged to actively participate in whatever activities in the community. I hope I summarize it well and very quickly summarize it. Okay, so questions po.
Thank you, Ma'am Jen. Hi, Sir Isaiah.
It's okay. Jen lang po.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Isaiah, and to everyone. Magandang hapon po. I'm from Davao City, and I'm very much pleased with this discussion because when I first heard about the development of this constitution and actually the formation of the provisional committee, I was very excited because this is a good start. In fact, I consider this as a milestone for UPOU students. And this is what I had been hoping for ever since I was enrolled in UPOU way back. Just a little background there before I proceed with my suggestions regarding 2 articles. I previously worked as a faculty member of the University of the Philippines, Mindanao for 5 years under the BA Communication and Media Arts program. And I was also enrolled at the same time while I was teaching in UP Mindanao at the Faculty of Information and Communication Studies under the DevCom program. So I actually resigned in 2020 so I could focus on the completion of my master's. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently enrolled in residency status. And I'd like to share a few insights in the draft or based on the draft. And this is actually based on my experience also as a former staff or officer under the Office of Student Affairs of UP Mindanao. So right before I resigned, the last admin position that I had an opportunity to assume was I served as the coordinator of the student organizations and activities section of UP Mindanao's OSA. So in my experience, I was able to have not some, but a lot of engagements with UP Mindanao USC. So Andre Carbonilla, I believe, was also part of the council. And he was also my former student for one GE subject. And in my engagements with the student publication, with the student council, with the different student organizations, I am very much excited with the formation of this constitution, so we could have somehow not a uniform what do you call this constitution, but somehow we could have some values that would be in uniform, not sorry for the term uniform, but somehow in congruence with how other student councils are upholding the student rights and welfares of the UP students in general. So my suggestion is, because I noticed that the last article that we discussed is about the virtual spaces and tambayan, and I myself is very grateful for that attempt to really push that. My suggestion is maybe, and I hope this could be considered, that that article could be merged with the previous article. Maybe we could have an article that could have a title which is like constituents rights and welfare, and then we could have sections that would detail their rights, their duties, and pwedeng, I may be wrong, but pwede kasing makapaloob yung tambayan, or yeah, yung tambayan, for example, as one of the constituents' rights, na the rights of the UPOU constituents could participate in virtual spaces or tambayan. So pwede siya actually under that, and the actual program or project is the specific establishment of an online space related to the platform or related to that. So I'm actually looking at the University Student Council Constitution ng UP Mindanao. So right now, it's ang rights ng constituents, regardless kung ano yung status ng estudyante, ay nakapaloob sa artikulo kasama ang duties niya. So pwede siya kasing emerge. Baka pwede siya ma-explore na yung duties, isang section siya, and then yung rights, another section siya. And then yung tambayan, it could be phrased as one of the rights. Yan lamang po. Maraming salamat.
Okay, thank you so much. How do you want to be referred to?
Julius, sir. Julius.
Julius. Okay, hi. Thank you very much. It's great. We've been saying kasi for the longest time that we want more, because there's this notion that the student council is only going to be run by undergrads like me, and I reject that notion, because nga 2/3 of OU are graduate students, and it's been really great. A lot of the student ambassadors are teachers as well, and so I love seeing teachers join the provisional committee and see it from like both sides. You're a teacher, you deal with student council, and then suddenly you also join. In fact, one of the earliest student council, the Provcom members, was actually a principal in a school in Baguio. So that for me was very strange. You're the principal running an entire school, and yet you still chose to join a student committee, student organization in UPOU. So I think that just shows how much everyone really wants it, not just from the undergrad, but from the graduate students, and how much value it can really provide. Now, in response to some of your queries, the reason we separate the virtual tambayan, or the tagpuan, as I now call it, because it's a headliner. If someone was reading the Constitution, they are looking at the different sections. A header showcases the importance of a certain item. And the platform guarantee is simply that we want to make sure that the university and the council guarantees that this platform exists. You'll notice we never mentioned that it was a website or that it needed to have X number of pages, for example. Because imagine 5-10 years from now, metaverse, VR, maybe that's the virtual space. And if we said website, then how would they be able to create this virtual world? Because we limited the definition simply to a website. I can share a bit more on this, hopefully so that it's out in the open as well. So we sent the feedback to the ICT office. So the ICT DO office of the UPOU is actually the one helping us set this up. And these are our proposed ideas. Okay, none of these are final. But essentially, we will have our own Moodle instance, which is like my portal. So it will be the same, not the same interface. It will look much better. Believe me, it will look much better. But it's the same open source learning management system. And imagine instead of having classes, you can have different councils and orgs. And teachers are students or org heads or student council members. And so then you can start to sign up for organizations simply by like how you do in my portal. And then you have instant messaging to every student built in. You have forums for discussion. You can upload files, generate courses. So for example, let's say you want to start a K-pop fan club as an organization. You can create an intro, an onboarding process within what we would call the Tagpuan platform. In terms of design, I think I have a demo version. This is what it could look like. Courses, let me see. All right. So we are testing a theme. Okay. So this is a Moodle theme. So imagine my portal looked like this, right? Modern 21st century. Login as a guest. So this, for example, this could be what your Tagpuan looks like. Could be a modern website. And it would have everything from your calendar. You could then sign up for courses. Let's go to the homepage. You could see, for example, orgs listed and latest events, news, publications. And then this is what I really like and we're pushing for. From the homepage, you could click get access or like join this organization. And then that's how you would be in your org. Kasi sabi namin, the problem with Discord, the problem with Facebook is every time the student graduates, wala. They start from scratch. Once your batch is done, that group chat no longer serves any value, right? It doesn't help any of the other students. They don't see what happened before. They can't join it. And so we wanted something, and we told the university, the only way to ensure longevity, to ensure transfer of power and transfer of knowledge is to have something that outlasts students, that can actually exist. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry if that expanded a bit.
Yeah, it's pretty clear for me. I mean, how the program is meant to be like implemented, and it's very promising. But is it okay if I would share?
Sure, please. We'd like to hear more
share
from you.
my screen. I'm because I had an opportunity to check my Google Drive, and I have this particular file, and this pertains to the Constitution of UP Mindanao Student Council. This is actually old, and right now they're currently amending it. And yeah, this is it looks really old in the way it's scanned.
Oh, it's even. You mean it's even old as like the scanned version?
Right. So I just hope that the specific program that's mentioned here, mentioned earlier in the presentation, could be presented in such a manner that it would merit a specific article. Because I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
and subject for discussion in the sessions to come, but that's at the, as how I perceived it, it seems to be a program or an intervention under student rights. So for example, in article section 3, it section
Mm.
1 specifically details who would be the constituent, which basically is the student of the university. And then section 2 is a basic itemization of the rights of the constituents. It doesn't really put all the
Okay,
details
may I
because
just jump in really quick? Thank you. So, um, I agree with you, 100%. I agree with you. Like, it is a right for students to have a place to meet, right? The I think what we need to clarify, and I'll tell the writing committee about this. What we need to clarify is the section on on the tagpuan is there to ensure that the space is provided. Because while you have the freedom to meet, what if you have nowhere to meet? Diba? So I think what I'm hearing from you is we need to strengthen a little more the wording of the rights, that you are free to meet, you are free to organize, and then we need to then expound on the tagpuan as you are guaranteed a place to meet. Because for example, before the pandemic, the University of the Philippines Open University actually has three major learning hubs
yes.
that it supports for physical interaction.
Mm.
And so that was actually part of the discussions when you have student council meetings. Where do you meet? You have a bunch of students in Cebu. You have a bunch of OU students in Mindanao. Where can they meet? And one of the proposals very early on in Provcom was, what if we could get an agreement with every constituent university that they provide us with a desk or even like a space inside their student council room? Um, and just to provide you some like background, we've been fighting for this platform thing for like 6 months, and the university really refused to make it because from their point of view, Dao, my portal is only for academic purposes. And so I explained to them, I said, so are you saying that student participation, student orgs are not part of the academic experience in UP? Of course, they responded, no, of course, we think that participating in the student council organizations is important in the academic experience of UP students. I said, so then why will you not provide us a platform? Because the other alternatives were, we wanted to put it in the AIMS portal so that when you registered, when you paid for your classes, you would also see the student portal. We talked to AIMS, they said no. We talked to my portal, they said no. We talked to the OUR, they said no. And so essentially what we were presented with was, if you won't give us a space within your websites, then you have to provide us an official space. Because the what exists now are Facebook groups and Discord channels. But how can you protect those if you don't have independence or control over them? So please send this document to us so that we can review it also. Thank you very much. You can send it to, I'll send you the email address, upouprovcom at upou.edu. I think it's just provcom at upou, sorry. Provcom at upou.edu.ph. So please send this to us. We will review it. We will take your ideas and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you, Jen.
I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Yes. We'll have time. It's 4:33, supposed to end at 5 p.m. Questions or suggestions? Questions lang pala ang nalagay namin.
Okay, wait lang ha. I'm checking the. Okay, so in terms of just updating, you are free to share this constitution with your classmates, with your course mates, but please provide them a link to this recording. These recordings will be uploaded naman so that they can have the proper context. The reason we want them to have the context is we don't want the same questions getting asked 1,000 times. We're online students. We know how to leave notes. We know how to leave ideas. But we would really want as many people, as many eyes to see the Constitution. And we want you to all know that this is different. This is very different than how every other person has crafted the Constitution. Historically, constitutions are crafted by an elite group of people who decide what they think is best for everyone. And so, as an open university, we really wanted to flip that on its head. And we said, what if any person in the university can suggest anything to the Constitution? For example, in 1987, the framers of the Constitution had to physically be in the room to suggest ideas. If you were a constituent from Cebu, Davao, there was no way that you could have your idea sent and incorporated into the Constitution. The US Constitution, for example, was written by delegates who had to meet, and they did not talk to their constituents when they were writing what they were writing. And so we hope with the Open Consti, we can change that. We can make it so that it is one of the first constitutions that everyone has a say in, everyone has a stake in. Um, Kind of like open source, really. That's what we're basing this off. That by being open, it is also more free, it's also more inclusive. So again, please feel free to share this. It's not like a secret document. Yun nga, walang secret constitution. Um, and if you want to even share it with your professors, program chairs, like Sir Julius mentioned, we'd also love that. We'd also love to hear their perspective from their many years of experience.
Isaiah, question lang, where can they get a copy of the recorded video? Will it be sa page natin? Or
So, yep. The ideal is the recording is uploaded both to Facebook and YouTube. There is a backlog with the YouTube. I will fix that. There are several meetings pa nga that should be uploaded to YouTube.
okay.
Oh, I think someone joined last minute.
Yeah. And so far walang questions. Not at least in my chat box wala. I think meron.
Okay. We'd also like if you are partnered with any other constituent university, if you are friends with any of their counselors, etc., to ask them to please respond to our request. Because part of what we want as UPOU, let me just give you a briefer. We are part of a larger family, part of a larger society, which is the UP system. There are 8 constituent universities, and there are actually 17. I only learned this now. 17 campuses under the UP system. And so UPOU is the 4th largest by student population, has the most graduates right after Diliman, and we have 4,200 students. And yet we are not recognized. When you go to the General Assembly, people were saying, OU? San ba yun? Taga Pampanga ba yun? They were completely unaware of what OU is, even though we've been here for a while. We're 23 years old, 27 years old,
27.
26.
27,
27.
26, 27 years old. We are not the 8th constituent. We are listed as the 5th constituent university. Hindi pa nga tayo last, but a lot of times it feels like we are being treated like the last. And so we want to make sure that changes. And we think that it's in everyone's best interest. You know, Martin Luther King once said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If we cannot guarantee the student rights of UPOU, what more for any other constituent university? And you'll see that also with how Ukraine is messaging itself to Europe. We are one of you, and if we fall, there, what is to stop the next? And so for us, it's been 27 years. How is it that we still do not have a student council? How is it that we still do not have student organizations in UP? Everyone keeps calling us, mga aktivista lang kayo. Daniel Efra says, true, dito to ang UP, ang UPOU, sabi ng iba. Exactly. What kind of statement is that? We work just as hard as they do. And a personal anecdote, before the pandemic, I had a lot of difficulty explaining what a online distance education was. And we were doing it before it was cool, before everyone else went online. And now that everyone has been online for the last 3 years, they know that it's not easy. They used to say, di ba madali lang OU? Ayun. After the pandemic, you can see thousands of students are tired and they're like, wow, this online stuff is very hard. And to add to that, sabi pa nga namin, UP Open University, when you graduate, you're still just a UP graduate. You're no different. You get a supply, you get your degree from the UP system. You're no different than any of them. They're not better than you, no matter how much they like to think about it. We're all equal under this system. And so we should take pride in it. And we are working with our partners. So we're very thankful for the UP Mindanao Student Council for actively supporting us. Because many OU students, yun nga, are from other constituent universities or have friends or work for other constituent universities. So we think it's very important that they share and promote our fight and our struggle for student representation as well. We'd like to welcome Sir Johnnyvic Valdez. I think you joined a little late. We're wrapping up, but if you have any questions, you can ask them. The Constitution is also provided in the chat. I think Jen can just resend it if you'd like to look it over. Just to share, I'm actually an offshore student, so it's like 9 a.m. here. Many of the Provcom members are volunteers recently are also coming from Japan, Indonesia. And I always like to share that UPOU has one student in every region in the Philippines and more than 400 students worldwide. Sabi pa nga, we think there's one student in every province, but hinahanap pa namin yung tawi-tawi, so we're not sure. But that really shows you how different and how unique UPOU is. Where else can you find a university with one student in every part of the Philippines? I had a classmate who said he was an indigenous person from Cordillera, and his profile photo was him in a bahag. That was very amazing to me because I've also met a classmate from UP Cebu. She flew all the way to Manila just to meet us for one day. And so these connections and these unique experiences, talaga we want to enshrine this in what makes our constitution different. Sabi nga namin, hindi pwedeng copy-paste lang yan. We could have taken the easy route, just copy-paste the constitution. Don't bother about it, don't think about it, just pass it. But we said we need to show everyone, we need to show the world that OU is ready for it, that the students of OU want it really badly.
Thank you, Isaiah. And Julius, for your insights. So since wala na mga questions, and if you have questions, we are still open for questions para sa input doon sa ating draft constitution, draft copy of the constitution. So please feel free to access the draft, but you need your UP mail to access it. So the next schedule for UsapangConsti will be on Saturday. We have a morning schedule and also an afternoon schedule. That's March 26, 9 to 11 a.m. for the morning session. And then we have the 3 to 5 p.m. schedule for the afternoon session. Ang discussion on Saturday will be on Article 6 to Article 14. So we hope that you can still join us, and let's talk more about the draft constitution of the UPOU. Para naman sa ating lahat to, para sa para sa bayan, and I always believe that lahat ng ginagawa natin is for the genuine student representation. I think that would be all. And if Isaiah, if you have something to say.
Nothing much. So just that the deadline, so that you understand the urgency of this, the Constitution needs to be posted by March 29. What this means is changes will generally not be allowed after March 29. So if you have something to say, please say it now. Because if you say it too late, baka matotga kayo, the one that got away. So make sure that you say it now before you regret it. Constitution has to be posted by March 29 to give ample time for the student population to review it and decide whether or not they will vote for the ratification of the Constitution. Should the Constitution be passed, this will immediately set in motion the ability to have student councils within UPOU, and you can have general elections as early as next school year. So we're really excited for that. We hope this pushes through. Thank you very much for attending.
Julius here, suggestion, perhaps it could be explored that virtual spaces or tambayan, in our case tagpuan na, be implemented as one of the student services under the Office of Student Affairs, or OSA, for better funding source. Ayan.
I think we just need to end the official meeting, but I'm actually willing to stay longer and have a chat with anyone who wants in a more informal way. But just to answer that really quickly, the reason it cannot be under the OSA right now is because the OSA doesn't have any technical capabilities to run the actual platform. It comes from the ICTDO office, and the budget is also coming from the ICTDO office, since they're the ones who have the technical expertise and the money allocation for this kind of project. But with that, I think Jen can close this meeting officially.
Yeah, thank you so much for your participation, and please remember na i-upload namin yung recorded video and it will be posted in our Facebook page. Please follow that. And if you will share the draft constitution, please also share the copy of the recorded video. Thank you so much and stay safe, everyone.
And recording.